right, go live on the face melt. 1 second. Well, I guess we're on for the YouTube. So thank you everybody for joining us today. We are the Veterans Action Council, and today we will be discussing our V.A.C. Roundtable, which is number 38, Stolen Valor. Now, all of us here have served in one aspect in the military or another. And one of the things that we have learned in post of our service is that there are people going around pretending to have and be in military service that never actually served. There's examples all over. It's the term stolen valor is very recent, but mimicking or pretending to be in the military apparently goes back hundreds, if not thousands of years for individuals who have served, etc. So it has become a talking point that we wanted to bring our discussion around. And this particular conversation is going to start off.
Muted.
Sorry, we had a minor hiccup there. Uh, so basically, stolen valor. What does it mean to me? What does it mean to us? So when we're talking about our service, it basically starts off is what does it mean to be a veteran? Okay, so we'll start off with Michael Krowitz. Michael Krowitz.
Thanks, Etienne. So that's a. I was just really just thinking about that, and there's no simple answer, is there? I mean, the basic answer, of course, is someone who served in the military, successfully served in the military, successfully as in entered the military and left the military, um, and conducted themselves in between in a way that was suitable for the military. So it's kind of there's basic, I guess there's a basic level of behavior that's embedded. That's the thing. I mean, the main reason why this issue came up was because of military veterans that were working in the Veterans Action Council that have a vast variety of military experience. Some that served for long careers with lots of decorations, and some that served very short career, having been cut off by being found to be using cannabis. Some using cannabis illegally, some using cannabis legally, all seen as illegal by the military. And, you know, it's been my experience that the military has used this to their advantage. These people aren't put out on a bad conduct discharge and told to go away. Actually, they're given a general under honorable circumstances or a general discharge with a appointment to the what do they call it, the inactive reserve. And you have a 6-year term that you sign up for. Generally, I guess is the term now. You sign up for 6 years, and you may serve 2 years or 4 years or whatever, but you actually are still signed up for 6 years on their logs, on the military logs. And if they put you over from active to inactive, still be on that log, then it suits the military quite well because you build up their numbers of military service without them actually having to pay you. You're already trained, you're ready to be sent somewhere, you're sort of in the bank account for them. And I think that's been their calculus with cannabis, because they've definitely done that with cannabis over the years, over these last 10, 20, 30 years. And also I think with post-traumatic stress as well, because they would, for a while there, classify people as having an emotional problem or something like that, rather than admitting that they had, in fact, an induced stress injury that was calculable and compensable. Instead, they were put out and again put on the inactive reserve. So it's a little bit off, I guess, the main point of what is a veteran, but that's my basic answer. And then just to put one little, cherry on top, I also really have a part of my heart that wants to try to expand what it means to be a veteran. and there are lots of things that are on the edges. We were talking about the merchant marines, we were talking about first responders, law enforcement, especially under certain extraordinary circumstances. So that's my short answer on what it is to be a veteran.
Well, exactly. It's unique to each one of us, and for most of us that are in the group, we're United States veterans. However, Nate, you are a veteran of the Israeli military, so you have your own experiences here as well. But what does it mean to you to be a veteran?
So this group actually helped me accept it. I always felt weird and I wouldn't call myself a veteran because in Israel, everyone does the military. So everyone's like, okay, we're all veterans. Big one, like the whole country. So there isn't that culture. And I never felt like I was a veteran. It wasn't until I messaged you on LinkedIn and you're like, hey, anyone that served anywhere is welcome. So I really appreciate the group being so welcoming. For me, it's you go and do something that most people will not, especially in this country. You don't, it's not mandatory. You're going and doing something and you're obviously it's a calculated risk, but you're still taking a risk and going out to the unknown, especially to different things. Like I pretty much served in my country. The longest I went was, I think, 35 days without going home. I know that you guys got to play sometimes for 6 months a year, maybe even longer. So it is different. And then also you guys were shipped sometimes halfway across the world, fighting a cause that, years later came out that wasn't very clear. So the veteran is thinking of putting yourself for the greater good of something bigger. And even if you don't understand it at the time, and even if the motives of the government were bad, you find out down the road, you still have the courage to go and do something extraordinary. And I like what Mike said, where it can be a firefighter running into the World Trade Center as it's coming down. It's showing courage when most other people are running.
I agree. That's a great point to discuss. Is that there's everyday heroism that deserves its own notion, and being a veteran isn't the only end all be all. It's just the service that the flag that we all fly have been flying under since our service. So we'll go on to you, Councilmember Armstrong. What does it mean to you?
Well, I think, as Michael has said, to most people, it's someone who went in the military. To me, it doesn't matter what you signed up for, and to me, what a lot of people misunderstanding is just the different reasons that people enter the military. Like, it's before the war, when it was still a voluntary war and mostly a peacetime army, voluntary and peacetime army. People went into the military for a lot of different things. But when I think about what is a veteran, to me, in general, I would say that I think about someone that went through what it is to be a veteran. Like, we all know what to be cold, to be wet, to be doing stuff that you definitely don't want to be doing for 24 hours or whatever, to be missing your holidays. To me, that's a veteran, the person who willingly did this. And that's the other thing I want to say about it. I was just a young kid. I was 18. But when I took a couple of things hit me really hard. When I took the oath, and the first time I shot a weapon at a silhouette shaped like a person, both affected me pretty deeply, because I was all gung-ho before I took the oath. And then I was 18, so I was old enough to comprehend what the actual words were, but I hadn't really comprehended the amount of sacrifice that I was giving. You're literally agreeing to live by a whole new set of laws. you know, and that to me was something that I really didn't understand the day I was raising my hand. So it, to me, that's a big part of it, you know, is that we all have this, we all went through that discomfort of being a veteran, regardless of what we did. And then the other thing is that so many people, regardless of what they started their service for, are people of service. And like like many people in this group, I think people that serve their community is a big part of what a veteran is to me. So I think that's what I would say. Yeah, that's what I think what a veteran is to me, I guess.
And myself, you know, those that serve, you know, I know people who have actually served in our drug war movement and consider them drug war veterans because they have served against their will in a war on their freedoms for the past, you know, since 1937. You know, so needless to say, it's yeah, it's a long and arduous history we have with prohibition, but at the same time, as I grew up, it was those that had served in the military. Didn't matter if it was peacetime, wartime. Um, there becomes distinctions within the military besides veterans. Those have seen combat tend to use the term combat veteran to have a distinction because of the less of 3% who actually serve in the military, less than 1% actually see physical combat. And so there's different distinctions even in the military. Of course, in most units, you receive your initial patch on your left shoulder. If you see combat, then you get a patch on your right shoulder. So there's distinctions in the military, how we dress. We are taught how to dress from basic training. It doesn't matter what type of military you serve in. There is an expectation of how you are supposed to look. And to say it is drilled into our heads, we are taken out. We are routinely embarrassed by our superiors, so that it is completely reinforced and understood on how we are supposed to look. So that is why we are the ones that usually can cite somebody who is misappropriating a uniform. So that leads us to our next discussion, which is what is stolen valor? And there's various definitions to it. The Urban Dictionary says it's when a civilian who is never military, therefore never earned the rights and privileges associated with the honor of wearing the uniform, wear one due to the following reasons: to get discounts for free services, drinks at stores, cafes, etc. They're trying to attract attention from the opposite sex, or they just want people's attention and thanks. When I go to Stars and Stripes, it goes a little deeper, and as you will understand, there's many layers to this because it's not just those who have never served. It is a term that is applied to the phenomena of people falsely claiming military awards or badges they did not earn, service they did not perform, prison of war experiences that never happened, and other tales of military daring that exist only in their minds. Some phonies with zero military experience create their stories from whole cloth. Others, having served an honorable but peaceful stint in the military, chose to embellish their records and spice up their otherwise unremarkable career. Yet others, who are legitimate combat veterans and some who were decorated and bravely serve, also embellish an already impressive military resume. The common thread is that these folks are lying in public about their military service. So that's basic definition of what that breakdown is. So what does it mean to you? I mean, have you ever, as any of our members here, I've seen guys that I know myself that I knew they didn't serve exactly how they're wearing the uniform. I can't say I was in a set or mindset to care to actually confront that person specifically on their service. Because it wasn't visually at a point where I could see that this particular medal did not belong to this particular person, etc. So we'll start off with you, Michael.
Yeah, thanks, Etienne. I went ahead and looked up the law because I had no idea what the law was. And within the last 10 years, actually in 2013, apparently, there was a bill passed called the Stolen Valor Act. And it makes it a crime for someone to claim they received a certain medal in order to obtain money, property, or some other tangible benefit. But the law only bars false claims about certain military awards like the Purple Heart, Bronze Star, and a few others, and only when someone makes a false claim about them to gain money or some tangible benefit or crime. Someone falsely claiming military service in order to brag or impress others is not a crime. However, the office, they say, will investigate as long as it involves forging, altering, or misusing records from the National Archives in some way. So that's kind of the government side of it. I ran into this pretty hardcore in the work that we were doing with Veterans for Medical Cannabis Access. We had a military vet who I think was so comfortable with his story that he didn't think about it anymore as being inaccurate or that it would ever be found to be inaccurate. I didn't get that vibe from him. He was a good guy, still a good guy. We're in good contact with him. He was leading our effort down there to add post-traumatic stress in a state, and wound up with the media figuring out his record wasn't what he portrayed it as. And what was really something is he was part of local veterans chapters and everything, and everybody had accepted his story the way he had portrayed it so many times, over the years that he had given little details of it or whatever. But it was not an accurate story. It was a stolen valor story, according to the media's perspective, at least. And that derailed our effort for a good year. I mean, it's not a small thing to have that kind of thing blow up. So these things are not insignificant issues. I will say one more little anecdote. I thought it was really something. I said about it the other day when we were talking in our meeting, but I think it was Jon Stewart in one of his comedy shows showed, I guess it was a new VA secretary, and there's talking to veterans out on the street, and here's this homeless veteran who is special forces, and to buddy up to him and kind of, I guess, talk on his level, this veterans administrator had said things that weren't accurate about his own military service. He misrepresented his own military service, and everybody was righteously upset about that. But John pointed out that, that isn't the issue at all. I mean, why is no one upset about the special forces veteran being homeless? And I think that's, another issue for another day. But Stolen Valor is a twisted, I guess it's twisted a labyrinth, as is the human mind when you get right down to it.
It is a fascinating situation, all in all. Nate, do you have any experience with Stolen Valor?
Yes, I did. So in Israel itself, it's a tiny country and everyone knows each other, so it's very hard to pull that off. You're at most 2 degrees separated from someone. So someone's like, oh, isn't that you? And I'm like, oh, you know that guy? And then he's like, then you're like, the person's like. So people generally don't try to do it. I will say, as a soldier in Israel, you always try to play on people's conscience. Like I jaywalked after I got out of the army. And I'm like, oh, I just got out. I don't need a ticket. She's like, no, you jaywalked. I'm giving you a ticket. And I'm like, all right. And then I went to a gym. I signed up my first gym, and I wanted a discount on the membership, and in New York. And I'm like, oh, I just got out of the Israeli military. She's like, okay, this is the price. I don't care. And then I'm like, all right, you can't play that card anymore. But the experience I had was the first person I actually worked with in Cannabis up in Humboldt. He was Israeli as well. And he was introducing me to his grower friends, and they were all like, "Oh, you were with forces," and asking all these questions. After a week, he told me to stop answering the questions, and I'm like, "Why?" He's like, "Well, this is a little awkward." And I didn't know I was going to become their friend, so I kind of told him I was in the Israeli Navy SEALs, which is the hardest training possible. And I know what he actually did is he guarded a gate in a munitions base that was in the middle of Israel's desert that never ever got attacked in its history. And he's like, by you answering your question so accurately, you're going to embarrass me, and I'm going to start figuring out I lied. And so that was my experience. I'm like, why would you do that? And he's like, well, I just wanted to make a good impression. And I'm like, so you're going to have to continue lying to your friends for the rest of your life. And I stopped working with that guy after a few months.
I would call that experience with something similar. So, it was an experience for sure. Well, not expected. You don't expect it. That's the thing. There's sometimes just the most unexpected situations that it comes up in, and I think that's the most fascinating part. How about you, George?
All right, so I would say when I think about this question, like it was defined in 2013, right, by the Stolen Valor Act, what a federal thing is. But I think there are definitely different levels of it. And the other thing I want to say about that also is that in Pennsylvania, they made a state law that's not restricted to just metals, but is restricted to some type of fraud. So you have to get some type of service or monetary return for the lie. But once you do that in Pennsylvania, it becomes a crime. It doesn't have to be like the federal law says. It doesn't have to be pertaining to these special metals. So I would put that as as a starting point for what stolen valor is. And I want to talk about the reasons that there really are different levels of stolen valor and why some of them bother me personally so much more than others. I think it just doesn't bother me a whole lot if somebody goes to Applebee's on Veterans Day and wears a veteran's hat so they can get a free freaking meal. You know what I mean? But under our law, that would be the person that would be subject to our law, right? Because he's getting something in return. And they were really trying to fight that kind of thing. However, I'm a firm believer that you can't legislate morality, right? So I don't think we should be trying to legislate all of these moral things. Now, to me, like the worst thing, the absolute worst thing, and there are people that have done this, is Medal of Honor. Like it's a really easy thing. If everybody doesn't know, the Medal of Honor recipients is a list. like it's an actual list, and there's a certain number of them. So you can't play Medal of Honor. But to me, that's just one of those things. You know what? We're not going to make a law about it, right? If I see you with that big, beautiful blue thing hanging around your neck, right? When you're in Class A's, and I go to that list and you're not on it, for me personally, that's something that doesn't need to be in a law. That falls under fuck around and find out. Because if that would just really, really, I think it's a lot more, as a veteran, those are the people who showed actual valor under ultimate, just the most difficult of situations that most people can't even imagine. So that, to me, there's really different levels, but I think it's good to leave the legislation part right where it's at. That's what stolen valor is, and each state can figure out if they want to make special laws or whatever. But frankly, that I think there's different levels, and there's the guy that's trying to brag so he gets a girl or whatever, big deal. but I think it's a much bigger deal when you start talking about our heroes, the ones that are heroes to us, that did things that were above and beyond what I was talking about when I said what it is to be a veteran, because that covers all of us, right? It's a whole nother level when you start jumping on grenades and, you know, taking out a platoon and saving 5 of your brothers and sisters and carrying them back. You know, it's a whole nother level of being a veteran at that. So it becomes very much more offensive. And with that, I will pass it to the next.
You bring up very good points. Each one of you do. Pearson, have you had any experience with Stolen Valor? Pearson? There he is.
Hey, sorry. Not in a severe way like I've seen on television. I mean, not like some blatantly obvious like person in a uniform that's all jacked up and they're you know, begging for change. Nothing that severe. But I think I have I've had experience a lot of people that are deceptive of their service, which I'm not, you know, it doesn't really matter to me whether or not, you know, they were in the special forces or a company clerk or a wrench turner. But the I guess when you allow for something like that, you allow for the bigger things to escalate. But no, I haven't had any firsthand experience with something extremely blatant. Yeah, thanks.
I had an inadvertent one while I was serving in combat. And this is kind of weird, but there was this cat I served with. Gribble was his name, and he was a non-vet. And he told us all these stories on how, you know, this crazy shit that he did, and, you know, used to regale us with all these stories. But, yeah, he was an E4. So, took it for whatever it was worth. Well, once we're not long into combat, one night when a stressful situation was going down, he just snapped and started going after his own men with his bayonet. And basically, it was a one of those situations where he was immediately dealt with, rubber roomed, and taken away from the front. Lost his, don't know whatever happened to him, but that was an example that I didn't realize was something that I had seen or been a part of, that is now termed Stolen Valor. But there was somebody who had served who stated his own, you know, truth to us, and then when it came out, the truth was that he was a helicopter mechanic working in the rear the entire time he was in Nam, and all those stories he had filled us up with were complete and utter lies. So probably those that he helped medevac or did other things, stories along the way that were from real soldiers. But when the stress of combat reared its ugly head, yeah, it collapsed. So it's a very strange thing. But I have seen guys faking that they were in Vietnam. I've seen people, you know, all the time on a street corner saying I'm a veteran. You know, it's not like I'm going to stop and ask them for their DD-214. If they ask me what's a DD-214, then I'm going to engage. Because anybody who's in the military, if you don't know those 2 letters and 3 numbers, then you were not in the United States military. Nate, you had a response.
What is E4? And you guys still get issued bayonets? You never got a bayonet in the bayonet.
Yes, I was actually in the Gulf War. I was actually issued a bayonet and actually used it on my rifle. In fact, one of the first times it was it was like you could have just taken a camera. It was a comedy situation, and it was our own guys shooting at each other, and It was in the dark. It was one of those situations. We were playing cards. Literally, turn off the lights inside the howitzer. I'm playing against my top sergeant. So my top sergeant says, "Bayonet." I'm like, "Oh shit!" in my head, and I grab my bayonet, and I'm the one to open the door, and I cannot get my bayonet to seat for anything. It is just loud and clanky. Come on, Fontaine, what the hell? What's the moment, sir? Shit, click. Dink. Yeah, so yeah, it's a reality sometimes still. Pearson.
Yeah, so no one gets issued bayonets. The Marine Corps, we get 12-inch K-bar that attaches to most of our weapons, our service weapons. The only picture I have in boot camp from my boot camp yearbook is me charging something with a bayonet attached to my weapon. It's pretty standard for the U.S.
Yeah, it was standard issue for the French Foreign Legion, who I served alongside. Because Lord knows we tried to trade with them, because everything they had was, of course, the best made. And, of course, everything we had was made by the lowest bidder. So they were kind in their laughter. George.
Yeah, I just want to say in 1985, I was definitely issued a bayonet, and it was definitely made in like 1949 for the Korean War. Yeah. And we still had them when I got out, as far as I remember, in 93.
Yeah, and my stepdad, of course, served in World War II as the 101st Airborne, has told me numerous stories about, using his and having to use his bayonet, especially when he came back, because he was a skinny, tall Texan, and people didn't believe that he actually served, or the stories that he said. So he would just hand them a rifle with a bayonet, and he would don his and said, "Come at me." And that's how he would prove time and time again that he knew what he was doing with his bayonet and that he had actually served. So, I mean, even World War II vets had to prove their own worth when they came back, because there wasn't YouTube and pictures and things like that. There were things such as, that's when the dollar was created, when V-Day Day, or when the Victory in Europe Day happened, a lot of the veterans had each other sign these dollar bills, so that they would then carry with them in their pockets, of everybody in their units would sign, and they would actually present their bill with all their buddies' signatures on it to prove that they hadn't had served. So again, veterans and proving you're veterans is kind of part of the reality of the Stolen Valor. And a lot of military guys will wear military or veterans gear so we can actually find each other and talk to each other. You know what I'm saying? Whereas, so that's an odd thing when people start donning things such as, Stolen Valor, or when they start donning military gear, we can spot it because we know what we're looking at and what we're looking for. So as we move on to our next question, so as we go through some of the numbers, there's actual numbers of Green Beret Special Forces, and then how many then they claim to be. So what is the motivation of somebody to be a fake veteran? Okay. What is that drive? What is that desire? What are they seeking? Because, yeah, it's a motivation not only of male veterans, it's also of female veterans, and it's also of peacetime veterans, part-time veterans. I myself even had my own stigma because I was in the National Guard, and that is drilled in early, even in boot camp, because the regular Army was treated different when it came to chow. Regular Army went first, then Army Reserve went second, then National Guard went third. That's how even it was divvied up through my basic training, and I was National Guard. So even in my own military, I was made to feel less, that I was in the military. I wasn't worth as much as the guy who served in the Army, the person who served, et cetera, et cetera. But when I was in the military, when I was on bases, there was those that were in special forces. And back then, it was before the military changed for a time where everybody wore berets. If you saw somebody wearing a green beret, that sucker over there was as badass as a badass was, you know, and they commanded a whole other level of respect from us and the soldiers, because we realized that the Green Berets were the Army's special forces. The Navy has theirs. There's Delta Force. There's very other special forces. Even the Israeli military has their own special forces that are those that are specifically trained for special warfare tactical situations. Okay, those are way above. I was a simple artilleryman, and without my artillery, I was a glorified infantryman. Okay, so there's really a whole lot of not as sexy in the military. And serving in the military, I think all of us can tell you all the ugly stories of scrubbing toilets and doing all the wonderful things of taking out the trash and buffing the floors and all the things your recruiters never tell you about. I had no idea how to buff or what a buffer was before basic training, but I'll be damned if I didn't have a doctorate in it by the time I graduated from AIT. But those are the realities of what the military teaches you. So, as we look at it, what are the motivations for people to fake being in the military? Because each one of us put our name on the dotted line, did our service, served honorably, went through our time, and moved on. Whereas these people have never served, they've come out of nowhere. What is the motivation? So we'll start off with Michael.
I did something really stupid. I did something that you know, they tell you not to. They actually tell you not to do that right in the beginning of basic training. They tell you not to volunteer for anything. And I don't know. I wanted to test myself. I wanted to see what I would do, you know, under a little more harsh conditions or whatever scenarios. I didn't know what they were going to be doing. You know, I just put up my hand and I would volunteer. And it was a exercise or something, you know, of our security and stuff like that during basic training. And it's funny, all these years later, going all the way back to my basic training, this is what I think of. But that was a really extraordinary day. They put me on door guard. And, you know, the door guard, I mean, you're within this barracks, which is well within your little unit, which is deep inside the military base. But you actually have a real job. It's a locked place where there's lots of valuables and stuff just sitting around. And you're not supposed to let anybody in the door that isn't authorized to be in that unit. And there's actual theft and stuff like that, like real world stuff that goes on. So it's not a non-job, but they made it especially crazy. I mean, they threw everything but the kitchen sink at me. Had people with all kinds of fake IDs and generals barking orders at me to open the door and everything else. And I screwed up. Finally, in the end, somebody had the right badge. And I just let them in, and then I realized, that badge wasn't on my list. It was the right badge, but not for the right building. You know, after all the crazy stuff that they showed me, I fell for it. And as I was letting them in, I said, you know, I realized that I didn't check the badge properly, and this may be an inappropriate entry. I wasn't going to try to stop them. It was like 4 colonels and 2 captains or whatever. And they all came in. But as they were going around doing stuff, I remember one moment where this very high-ranking person asked me to hold something while they were searching through and ransacking the place and, you know, doing their inspection, which was, you know, what they do, I guess, appropriate. It wasn't, we weren't being robbed. But yet, I didn't do that. He handed it to me and I put it down and then just walked off because I understood my job as being over the entire dorm, over the entire barracks dorm. It was like 2 sections of beds and a couple other spaces, and I kept moving around to watch what they were doing and observe them, because I'd let them in. and I was actually commended for that. I didn't do as bad as I thought I did. I thought I had screwed up bad enough that they would send me back. I mean, that's how bad I thought I screwed up. But he commended me on pulling it together, not doing too bad, evidently. But anyway, the reason why I bring this old story up, nostalgic story up, has nothing really to do with the story, just the feeling of, I wanted to know what I could do. I tested myself, and specifically that my expectation, or what I thought I was going to do, didn't match what I actually did. And this was, a test. I mean, that's what tests are for. And I could extrapolate from that, any number of kind of crazy scenarios that might occur where you're not ready for that. You're not trained for that. You might think you're ready for it. You're getting into big boots too fast, whatever. I think that if you reverse that and you just sort of pick at that for a second, I think that's the core of Stolen Valor. It's people that you want to believe that you would do great things. You want to believe that you would be able to step up, and having never had that test, you even blame the world for not testing you. And I think maybe, I don't know, I'm playing with it, being that I've never experienced it firsthand, but that's what I would estimate that it comes from.
All right. Nate?
I think it's a bigger question, like why are people con people? And it can be for many reasons. I remember, because it's so rare in Israel, there was a guy that pretended to be an officer in Sayeret Matkal, which is the Israeli equivalent to the Delta Force. And he did it mainly to get laid. And because it's so rare, they blasted him on national news. At the time, there's only 3 channels on the Israeli TV, so everyone in the country pretty much saw it. And there's a famous story in the paratroopers. Lebanon was Israel's Vietnam. They went in for an operation in '82, and then they ended up leading to 2000. And there was a known story, I think it was '98. There was this big badass paratrooper. He was a machine gunner. He was a bodybuilder. He was Army service. Everyone was sure that he was going to be the most fierce warrior ever. He was the best trained, had the best scores and everything. But when they actually hit the first combat situation, and they really needed his machine gun power, he crouched under a rock and refused to move. And they discharged him after that. He did not get up the entire time, put his whole team in danger. And he was just clutching his machine guns, so people couldn't even take it from him. He was so scared. It's kind of what Mike was saying. Until you actually are there, you don't know. It's a lot of times the quiet guys that actually don't make a lot of noise and are not the biggest, that actually prove to be the most fierce ones when actually combat had. I think it's just, in general, why I think everyone in some point in life is guilty of embellishing some detail of some story, regardless if it's military or anything. We all have egos, and we all want to make ourselves look a little better. If it's impressing a girl or impressing a boss at a job or whatever it is, we try to polish our image a little bit. And let's say berets, in Zenith, we do not wear them at all. We have them only on our A-class uniform. On our shoulder, we only wear them at ceremonies, but that's the number one way you can tell what unit you are, is the color beret. So there's multiple. There's probably, I think, 30 or 40 different colored berets in this military. So yeah, and there's a prestige about, is like you're saying that you do stuff that no one can even imagine. When I try to explain what it is to stare death in the face, for someone that spend their whole life in LA, it's very hard to relate to that. So by showing that, it's also hard, especially in the special forces, it's hard to disprove that. It's an easier lie to get this kind of boost your ego with people having trouble to verify.
And go on to George.
Yeah, I think this one is pretty simple, just like Nate said. I think most of the time it's them feeding their ego for whatever their ego is telling them to feed or whatever. For the most part, I think it's human nature to want people to think more of you. So if you did serve and you're talking to someone that served and you have that type of personality, I think you're more apt to try to talk up what you did, right? And if you didn't serve at all, then and you have that type of personality and you lie to one person and they buy it, then it becomes just another lie, you know. So I think it's a moral issue, and that people that do it are just people that are willing to lie about some really personal things. Yeah, I honestly think that it's pretty much just them feeding their own ego for whatever they're trying to get, whatever it's hungry for, whether it's money or people looking up to them, which is a big, or, you know, getting a date, getting laid, however you want to put that. That's definitely a motivation for some. And because our society puts us up on a pedestal, maybe not even so much society, but especially like in the movies, they glamorize a lot of these people that are in these special forces units and do all these high speed, low drag things. And, you know, that's why I admire those people. So it's a way to get admiration from other people that they didn't do the work for. I think that's my short answer to that.
Thank you for that, George. So, Pearson, what do you feel is the motivation behind some of the stolen valor?
It seems like we touched pretty heavily on the pride aspect, like the chance of somebody feeling like they are somebody, maybe later on than they have the opportunity to actually realize they were trying to be a part of something. But then again, it's, you know, could be a lot of I think a lot of things revolve around like financial benefits, like financial gains due to pity, you know, pity or charitable donations, using I'm a disabled veteran in order to gain trust from you know, really anybody. I mean, it's something that that is easily given from a lot of civilians and fellow military veterans. If you're able to say you were, you know, in the military, the civilian populace is probably going to trust you a little bit more, which Nate mentioned con artists, and I don't know if it might have broken up on my end, but that's really, I mean, it's an easy thing to do, especially when it's you're I say sometimes that you know, saying no to a combat or disabled veteran is like stealing candy from a child cancer patient, because of how much in regular society it's now like anybody that that you have a you know, you've never met before. And like when I was traveling, every single person that found out that I was in the military previously thanked me for my service, and, you know, I'm sure I got a couple drinks on them while I was in Boston and Philly. And it's something as little as you know, getting a few extra drinks, getting patted on the back, to you know, starting up a charity, saying that you're legit and getting millions and millions of dollars potentially, because you're breaking this trust. And it's not something that, you know, not hasn't regularly happened in all of human society, and it's the con man. So yeah, that's all I got. Thanks.
So I'm gonna go next to Al. Al, we've covered a few different things, but what we're talking about currently is the motivation behind those that, more in fact, those that have never served as opposed to those who have served, the motivation behind Stolen Valor. And one thing we talked about prior, and if you have any examples, do you have any examples of interactions with Stolen Valor in many of your years of activism?
Well, yeah, I mean, my perspective is somewhat historical, I guess, in that as a counselor for the Agent Orange program back in the late 80s, early 90s, we were sent out as counselors to the bush to find Vietnam veterans. That was our specific clientele, although we did address everybody from World War II on. But we specifically sought Vietnam veterans who were hiding out somewhere in Virginia, West Virginia, North Carolina. And what we found was that about 20%, we being my peer group, the other counselors and myself, there were 8 or 9 of us. And we found that about 20% of the people, the men, they were always men, that presented themselves to us as veterans were not. 20%, 1 in 5. We again, the organization replied to the Agent Orange people and the VA. We worked for both of them, and said this. And other groups like us started to pay attention and confirmed our number. So now this is 30 years ago. The vast majority, I don't want to put a number on it, but way up there, of these folks that presented themselves as veterans did so in order to get some sort of benefit, money, healthcare. I don't know. They were after something. That was then. I'm not sure that's now. You guys are a lot closer to it now than I am. And I suspect now, and I'll go back in history for the audience, not for you guys. You know what I'm talking about. But back when Vietnam veterans came home, we were denigrated. It was just terrible. It didn't matter who you were. It didn't matter if you're in Germany. You come back over, you were denigrated, right? And well, we didn't particularly appreciate that as a class of veterans, warriors. I've said this publicly, and I'll say it again because I believe it to my core, that one of the biggest betrayals ever put on American military personnel was perpetrated by World War II veterans. They completely ignored the guys in Korea, for Christ's sake. Half of them were World War II veterans. And they said, well, they're in a police action. Well, 50,000 of them died in a fucking police action. And these World War II veterans couldn't ante up. And then we come home, and they wouldn't ante up to us. We weren't in a war either. Hell, the goddamn Air Force in Vietnam dropped more bombs on Vietnam than the entire German, Italian, American, British troops ever dropped on the whole goddamn World War II. We dropped on a country. Don't tell me we weren't in a war. But they said we weren't. And we got pissed. We were not only pissed at the civilians who denigrated us, we were pissed at these fucking people. Who are you anyway? You're not going to support your warrior class? And they did not. They did not. You know, people are going to rewrite my words, but I'm telling you, I lived through this shit. World War II veterans did not acknowledge us. And therefore, they weren't about to acknowledge the guys that were in the Gulf War or Iraq or Afghanistan or Somalia, wherever the fuck they were. And so it pissed us off, non-vets. We've been there. We've been tough. We understand tough. And so what we adopted, we being, I saw it in the Agent Orange Commission. I saw it on the wall with the guys I met that built the wall. What an honor that was. I saw it in the VA guys we interfaced with. We come up with a slogan. It was simple, said never again. And what it meant to us was that never again would a warrior in the United States served honorably in Germany or wherever the hell, it didn't matter, wherever the hell they served, never again would they be denigrated for their service. And I think that one of the biggest legacies that Vietnam veterans have left the United States of America is just that you don't send these kids out there to die or not die. And then when they come home, those that do, say they were shitheads. You don't do that. But this country did it. This country did it by the millions. And I'll die pissed off at that. But I'll also die very proud that the guys I served with in Vietnam, the men and the women, said never again. And that's why now Stolen On is a big deal. Because now the Gulf War vets and the Afghan vets, et cetera, are respected. They should be. They should be, and they are. But that's why you have wannabes. That's why you have the same 1 out of 5 or whatever the hell we dealt with 30 years ago. They're there. Stolen honor, stolen valor. They want benefits. They want to get laid. Everything George said sucks. It's unethical. Those people ought to be embarrassed about themselves, but they're not. But what again is our responsibility as veterans, I believe, is that we continue to identify these imposters, these frauds, and denigrate them. And at the same time, of course, honor our brothers and sisters.
So eloquently stated. Thank you very much for joining us and for, your history as well as for your guidance through the decades, because it was you Vietnam vets who came to us Desert Storm vets and said, thank you for your service. Welcome home. And that was very deeply moving to many of us that you said that and how and why. We became brothers very easily because you were sort of our stepfathers that we never had, because you spoke the truth to us and you told us of your experiences so we could also share in your truths. And we were not around for when you were so denigrated, and we're sorry that happened to you. It was undeserving, to say the least, and you didn't deserve it. But at the same time, you have definitely pointed out many reasons why people look toward Stolen Valor and why it has become a reality that occasionally becomes a news story here or there. So as we further our discussion, so what status do combat vets, especially combat wounded vets, hold in our cannabis activist community? Well, I'm not sure what status that is. I've always held those that are in a higher honor because I had family members who have served, from my father in World War II to my uncle who was a submariner to my cousin who was killed in action in Afghanistan, to myself who served in combat in Desert Storm. I myself was wounded, but not combat wounded in the sense I had heat strokes, and getting dragged behind a howitzer is not, unfortunately, one of those things where you get a Purple Heart. So I say I was wounded during my combat experience, but I do not have a Purple Heart. I have to say that distinction because the automatic response from people is, oh, so you have a Purple Heart. No, I don't, because the last time I was wounded was days after the armistice was ended. So therefore, it was no longer a war. So therefore, it's not a combat injury. However, those that are in combat, those that do have Purple Hearts, there are distinctions, and one that those of us who serve, we hold in honor of those. We have a higher respect for those that have been wounded, etc. So there's another motivation of why people want to pretend that they are Purple Hearts. But you can't just go out and get the Purple Heart license from your state, because I know you've driven around your state and you've seen the Purple Heart licenses, etc. So those are realities that you have to prove who you are. And yes, there is a proper list, and there's an actual name on the back of your Purple Heart, if I am proper, because my stepdad had 3 of them from his service in World War II between D-Day, Bastogne, and his other service-connected realities. So, whereas he was wounded in combat, wounded so bad that he was the only survivor of his platoon in the Battle of the Bulge, and he had to stay awake for 48 hours after with his bayonet to fight the medics from cutting off his legs, because his legs were frozen so bad they wanted to cut his legs off. So that, when I heard that from him, when he told me that story when I came back from my combat experience, really blew my mind, because I know what it's like as an exhausted soldier after to do 18 hours of war, and then congratulations, 6 hours of guard duty. Oh, when am I supposed to sleep? Okay. And then you try to figure out that you've survived, and now you're literally fighting off your own men to keep your legs. That's a whole other level of bravery and understanding of a reality that I never had to experience. However, there are people who pretend those are realities. So as we go back amongst our cannabis activist community, I myself have been led, and I started in this movement because of Dr. Todd Micarea, himself a veteran, peacetime veteran, but he ended up compiling all the information regarding research from the medical marijuana research the federal government did and put them in a book. He was my first medical marijuana doctor back in the 90s. Also, another veteran, Jack Herrera, came to my university in 1989 with a book called The Emperor Wears No Clothes that, needless to say, changed my life and countless others. So then there was another I would work alongside who changed the world, Dennis Perrone, himself a combat veteran. He was there during the Tet Offensive, and never really spoke amongst about his military service until I had some one-on-one time with him, and because I was also a combat veteran, that he had that conversation with me. So myself, a combat veteran as well, I've been treated with my own level of respect from the rallies that I did in the early 90s, 93, 94, myself having nearly 30 years in this movement. Look to veterans such as Al Byrne, also, who started Patients Out of Time. My other veteran mentor, Michael Crowitz, who was a peacetime veteran, also changed world, literally. So I myself, I don't think that it matters, combat, wounded, combat vets, etc. All of my mentors have been veterans, both combat or peacetime, and both are valid. Both have been very great guidances, and let's have this discussion. So, Michael Crowitz, you're one of my heroes and one of those veteran mentors. So you have watched this movement grow and contract, as well as Al, but we'll start with you. What does it mean to you and the cannabis community?
Now that you're talking about it a little bit, you kind of opened up my brain files a little bit. It's really a heavy duty subject, I just to preface the answer, I came up at a very interesting time. where, and Al, I'm sure will second this, there was a moment there where the drug policy reform movement was all kind of one thing, and everybody hung out in one place. And there was a couple of people actually willing to fund things like the Alliance of Reform Organizations, dinners that would happen on the margins of drug policy, alliance, foundation conferences or whatever. And we would meet and talk about strategy, global issues of interest to the reform community, which marijuana and cannabis policy is, of course, always front and center. But I actually came up, I tell everybody, I started handing out flyers at the college, at the little community chapter, Virginia Tech chapter of Normal, and worked my way up. Real meritocracy, working my way up to the top of the cannabis movement. Well, most of that was spent in this sort of college of the drug policy reform movement. And I guess the whole story being that none of that had anything to do with veterans, nothing at all. And I came into my own working in the cannabis space, and two things. One is exactly what Etienne was saying, and that is just organically you find yourself amongst veterans. We're only 1% of the population at large, but we're everywhere you look at these events and things that we were working on. The leaders of our movement, the icons of our movement, invariably. I mean, Dennis Perrone, you mentioned, but also, some of the most significant victories that we've ever had. Timothy Leary, Louis Armstrong, the Jack Hare and the Hemper, and the Emperor Wears No Clothes, and just so many things that if you pull veterans out of the mix, I don't know what the cannabis movement would look like at that point. I really don't. So there's that. But then also I came up in this movement, sort of real grassroots, and really felt like a strong need to pay back. That going to what Al was saying about how veterans were treated, and cannabis was on both sides of that. So the veterans that got very rudely yelled at or spit at or whatever at the airport, I'm sure there was somebody in the mix that had a pot logo or pot flag amongst those that were yelling at him. But also at many rallies and marches and things that we were doing in the cannabis movement, there would be someone right near the microphone or even at the microphone with a justifiably worn jacket from Vietnam or whatever. They were there. They were in the middle, as I just described, the center of everything in our movement. So they were both sides. Cannabis was both sides of that. And I think, and just to throw a little history in it, it's really interesting. If you've never heard this before, the 1 minute history, the Yipsters were going to do a whole series of concerts with, what's his name? John Lennon and Yoko Ono. And they did, the first one was the Free John Sinclair rally. It was like 1971. And they were going to do a whole series of these to end the war. And of course, if you follow the history of Yoko and John Lennon, you know that Nixon foreclosed on that. And there's a lot of jail and interruptions in that flow. So there was never any second concert in that Yipster concert series. But that shows you, I think, right there, how closely related marijuana was. I mean, it was basically in the Yipsters' eyes, okay, the first concert rally will be for John, and the second one and therefore other ones will be for ending the war in Vietnam. So these things were almost tied at the hip, cannabis and ending the war in Vietnam, as well as veterans in the cannabis movement, trying to legalize cannabis. So it's very complicated, I think. And being on both sides of the issue, I felt like we had to be really, really, really clear. With Veterans for Medical Cannabis Access, I took great pains in making sure that we were talking about who we were talking about, and characterizing people very, very carefully, and not mischaracterizing certainly not my service record or anybody else that we were working with. That was of utmost importance, just to not fall into that trap and to not even be part of that mire.
Well, Al, you're also longest tenured, but as the elder statesman and somebody I've looked up to, because you and your previous partner had created Patience Out of Time. You set standards And I always greatly respected that you were both veterans, but you also worked alongside quite a few, not just the ones that we've mentioned. So, um, your thoughts?
Well, I can handle elder statesmen. Just don't call me elderly, okay? But, I mean, everything. I got into this thing by accident, really. I mean, my father, I've told you guys this, but I got involved with Normal in the late 80s as a consultant. I ended up running the damn place, and history goes on with what it was. But when I got there, again, I must say out loud, I was a Vietnam veteran. This was 1987, 88. If you were a Vietnam veteran, you're still a shithead. And there I was saving Normal from extinction with another guy who is a veteran who we haven't mentioned, Jim Turney, Air Force. He sat there right next to me for 2 fucking years and did all the shit that I couldn't do. Another vet. And when my greeting from the cannabis community was hostile. Hostile. The board of directors was hostile on the most part. Certainly the lawyers were, because they saw me as an interloper, a problem. Wait a minute, this guy's got a different idea. He doesn't want Normal just to sit here and make money for lawyers. He's got something he wants it actually to fucking do. But to go to the veteran issue, I was a enemy of Ed and the lawyers, Stepanian, and then on the other hand, one of the biggest allies in the legal community at Normal was a Navy vet. He says he wasn't a non-vet, but I'm telling you, he walked on the ground in Da Nang. That makes it okay for me. Jay-Z, John Swirling, superhuman being. Fucking A. You can't find a better fucking human than John Swirling. And so in the end, what the Normal board ended up doing was they put Swirling in charge of me and Jim, 3 vets, 2 Navy guys and an Air Force guy. We were in charge. We ran the thing. We brought it out of fucking debt, and life goes on. And there's another part of the story with Carl Sagan and Keith Stropp and all that shit, but read my book. But the point is, and Etienne is exactly correct. There was a very, very, very private communication between veterans in this area of talk, cannabis, medical cannabis, legalization of cannabis back in those days. Dennis, Jack, me, all these guys. And we had our own thing we were doing underground, but it all worked out pretty good. Dennis was a Marine, by the way, and he was at Quezon. If you ever heard of the siege of Quezon, it's one of the worst artillery barrages ever experienced by human beings. And Dennis was there during that. Dennis was also shot by a San Francisco policeman, unarmed. He was shot. Of course, the cop walked away. But Dennis had a serious problem with post-traumatic stress. And he and I discussed that shit for years. Jack Herr would call me out of nowhere and want to talk about veteran issues. Not cannabis issues, just veteran issues. It's the same thing we're doing now. There's 6 of us here, 7 of us. We're all vets. We're talking to each other because we know we can trust each other, that you guys are going to listen to me. I'm going to listen to you. If we don't understand, we're going to goddamn try to. And it was the same way back there with these guys. So I say over and over again, just as, was it, who just said that, Mike? If it wasn't for fucking veterans, I don't know if this thing would have happened at all. So, I mean, that's my statement on it, that back then, even in the cannabis movement, we were shitheads. But we've been shitheads before, and we got over it. And it's the same way with the cannabis. I never thought of it as a movement in my life. I hate to use that word, but of all the cannabis activity going on, it was the vets that not only spearheaded it, but figured out the both the tactics and the strategy that eventually has brought us to what we're here today. So it's to me, it's just another pat on the back for being a veteran. It's that old thing. We took an oath, but there was no clause of it's over now.
Well, we're also joined by our wonderful Wade Laughter. Wade, you have said in the past how many years you've never really talked about your military service or that you're a veteran because of you're just so busy with your work in the cannabis community. But you were neck deep in the cannabis community, so you had your own respect around you or to those that were veterans as well. So how did you reach out to them, and how did they reach out to you?
Yeah, thank you, Jen. I really felt a lot what Al was saying about the disrespect that would come from people that I felt like I wanted to work with when they found out I was a veteran, particularly of the Vietnam era. And I didn't go to Vietnam, thank God. But and yeah, it was a funny thing for me there for a long time, where it just wasn't something I talked about, wasn't really that big of an issue for me. What really brought me back to veterans' rights and access for all was learning about the number of veterans who commit suicide, either during or after their service. And that's a clear sign of distress. One of the things that I think the military did for me is it taught me certain habits, if you will, ways of doing things, ways of approaching things. I think it's part of why veterans have been so active in the cannabis movement. We saw a problem that needed solving, and we were given the tools and or were the kind of people that would try and solve problems that we got after trying to solve them. And for me, the real issue of the moment around access for all, again, goes back to veteran suicide and those who are struggling with their life, trying to keep it together or put it together after service, be it because of injuries sustained in service or PTSD, traumatic brain injuries, and or nightmarish scenarios. And that's part of how I became aware of the veteran suicide issue. Back when we first got our big outdoor farm going, I reached out to the WOOFers, the World Organization of Organic Farmers, which is an organization of folk that, are people that have farms that are looking for workers, and meantime, workers that are looking for farms that need help and want to learn from those farmers. And we had pretty enthusiastic response to our initial posts to that platform. And I decided that why don't we limit it or ask for folks who've had veteran service, and got pretty dramatic results from that. And a whole string of young men and a couple of women from the Marine Corps came and worked on our farm. And some of them really helped me tune back into some of the issues that veterans have with the VA and with society at large. There's all kinds of people that'll walk up to you and say, thank you for your service, and then turn around and start muttering about the way your hair is too long, or, they don't like the cut of your jib or whatever. A lot of lip service has been historically paid to veterans, and not a whole lot of real action and money to back up that lip service. And I think that's part of why the work that we're doing here is part of the Veterans Action Council, ensuring access for all, not just to veterans, but literally for all, and not just here in America, but across the world. And I think that's all I got in the way of a rant today. I think this is a profoundly good topic, the whole concept of stolen valor, because there's way too much of it going on, not just in veterans, but people claiming to be, first responders or for that matter, pardon me for going political, but policemen pretending they're ready to respond to an emergency. And instead they're standing around in a classroom hallway, waiting for somebody to tell them what to do. And I'll stop there. Sorry, that's stolen valor to me.
Great point, sir. So Nate, you said yourself that you didn't consider yourself a veteran, although we do. But you, as a leader and one of the newer leaders in the cannabis movement, what does veterans, or is there a difference between combat veterans, combat wounded veterans, in the cannabis community that guides you or that you look to or towards?
So I'm relatively new to the industry. I only started in 2015. So, I have educated myself on the history. I will say my first exposure to veterans in cannabis was through a High Time magazine article talking about it. I wasn't aware of it. I'm more of an introvert, so I usually keep my military service to myself. I also don't speak about a lot in the Bay Area and in the cannabis industry because I'm an Israeli veteran in particular. It comes on the political thing. I've been asked if I killed Palestinian kids, which I never did. And I just don't, I don't want to get it into those kinds of talks. It's not going to understand. But I did a shout out for Dennis Perrone because I do a Giving Thanks Friday on my LinkedIn. And I only learned today, actually, I'm ashamed that I learned that he was a veteran only today. And all of you guys, I've only been on the school for a short time, but you guys really have been on the trenches in ways that I'm too young to be able to, of showing that you can be a veteran and be very active in the cannabis and they don't have to counteract. And you guys really have been there when the DEA would kick down your doors. Like, I will never know what that is. I really disrespect all of you guys, all the hard work and all the foundation you guys have built. And it's only been about a year that I really realized how much involvement the veterans have. And that's why the education day that our normal chapter is putting on, a big component of it will be a compassion giveaway to veterans. The article talked about how this one veteran, they interviewed him, how he said he was on 11 different medications a day. And within 2 months of using cannabis, it was down to 2. And within 6 months, he was off all his medications. I was like, wow. I know they call medical cannabis. That was the first time it hit me that it could actually be a medicine. I thought it was just, a way for legalization and easier for politicians to pass, but I realized it really was. And I just respect all you guys and all your hard work. And you guys are a guide, and I see all of you as mentors and help me educate me on all the stuff you guys went through in military years ago and in the cannabis industry when it was a lot more on the line for joining.
Well, we're proud to have you as part of us. We'll go on over to George. Councilmember Armstrong.
So first of all, within the cannabis industry, I think it's pretty common, like I said earlier, that as vets, we have a different level of respect for certain classes of veterans, whether it be a combat veteran or something like that. So I think that's a short answer. But when we go to veterans and advocacy, so I started to fancy myself kind of an advocate. I was mostly a keyboard advocate for the first couple of years, and had went to Harrisburg and done a few things like that. But one of the first things that I saw that really motivated me was in Philadelphia, the Veterans Day Parade, when they had 22 people do a die-in at the end of the parade in front of the judges. And then the High Times article that followed that had Pearson, our council member, on the cover. And I thought that was really cool. But at that point, I really didn't. I intended to be a cannabis activist, but you know, at that point in my life, I really didn't think of myself as a veteran. I was talking, all these guys were actual combat veterans, and this is very appropriate for tonight. You know, Pearson and I have talked about this a little bit. You know, I felt inadequate, certainly to join their forces as a veteran, you know, a veteran advocate. But then when I reached out to just help them do advocacy stuff, they were more than welcoming. And so I have a huge amount of respect for all of the advocates that came before me, and especially like this new thing of combat vets. It was hard for me to understand why some of them were so private about it. Because like Al said, you know, the Vietnam vets worked so hard for us to get the proper respect, for this generation of warriors to get their proper respect. But unfortunately, what I think, you know, a lot of those guys ended up having a lot of problems in the community as well. So, yeah, I think the amount of respect I have for guys like ATN and Al and Mike and guys that I didn't know when I started to research the advocacy of cannabis. I mean, the veterans have led the way. And if we're going to talk about the amount of respect, that different respects that veterans get in the cannabis community, I just want to say to all of my heroes, like 4 of which sitting right in front of me on this Zoom call, like long time, you're all here. You're a hero too, Pearson, but you and I are newcomers compared to all of these guys. You know, it's a whole different level that you guys put it at. But I honestly think that the community as a whole does not give veterans the credit that we deserve, like Al talked about. Like, seriously, if you look at every step along the way of the fight to free this plant, veterans have been there for the last 45, 50 years. And to a year, you can't find anything important going on that doesn't have a veteran attached to it. And to me, that's amazing. So regardless of how you want to rank them up or put them in, I'm very proud of what my brothers and sisters have done in this new community. I think it says a lot about, like I said earlier, in general, veterans are people that serve their community. And I think it is proven out. And I think most of you humble gentlemen are fine with being underappreciated, but it upsets me when the new guys that come along that jumped into it, there was kind of a feeling that they got taken advantage of. And that's kind of, I guess, the last point. You know, there was a lot of these people that were at very, very contentious places in their own mind. They're either on or coming off a large amount of pharmaceuticals. They are not in a real stable place in their life, in their mind. Many of them have separated in the past 12 months, and they're coming into this. And I've seen many of them, you know, get taken advantage of just for the simple fact that they want to have, hey, listen, you're a combat vet, come sit at my dispensary or whatever. And the guy ends up giving somebody, you know, just hours and hours of his time, and you ask him, well, what did they do for you? I don't want anything, you know. It's like, well, no, that's not, you can't be taken advantage of. And that's just a really small example. But yeah, it hurts me to see those ones that tried to follow in your footsteps that were open about it, right, Al? That were open about it. A lot of them got taken advantage of. But my biggest point is that I think veterans should be lauded by the cannabis community a lot more than they are. Not just this group of warriors that fought in this war, but especially the group of warriors that fought in the drug war, that have been fighting this war since day one. So with that, I want to thank you all of you guys for doing what you've done and continuing to serve.
Humbled and honored to walk alongside you, sir, and thank you for joining us, because you're a blessing to have amongst us. Pearson, so you've been on the cover of High Times. You yourself found yourself thrust from a nobody to a somebody, but you're somebody of the GWAT generation who I've come to not only know but respect for the leadership that you have shown amongst your other GWAT vets, but the leader that you naturally are. You have taken that as your own self to try to affect change in your own state, becoming a leader amongst yourself and your own community, of which you got recognized for, and as you should be, as other veterans should be. But the spotlight happened to shine on you. So, you know, as we were talking about the status of veterans, especially in the cannabis community, what was that like for you to experience?
Like I said, I think I brought up on the other topic. We're at least in America, I can't speak for elsewhere. We're able to get some type of recognition for sacrifice, and then willing to possibly have to go for the country if that's unfortunately what our to do. Different time and then know that it's personal, and no really able to what the because of through have the ability to not really worry about others. And when I got High Time front cover, because I was in my Marine Corps uniform, which is debated that I think there's give that for yeah, that wasn't for, and even now that's that yeah, because I'm but we're or deemed war. So there's
Pearson, Pearson,
all
right. I thought it was just me. Pearson, your audio is broken, sir.
So
Yeah, audio is broken, Pearson. I'm not sure what's happened, but you're helicoptering really bad.
how about now?
There you go. Start
Oh shit.
all
Okay.
over. You
Yeah.
have to start from the beginning,
Sorry.
sir. Sorry.
Oh man. Oh, it's okay. I'll sum that up then. My bad. You know, I think because I was you know, in the military and the things that I've experienced with you know, what I had to do in the military and the ability to, you know, not have been you know, left in the rear, which literally nothing got through. So the difference between I'm going to reiterate. Sorry. There's a difference between the combat veteran, the disabled combat veteran, the disabled veteran. But when it comes to these, most or all veterans that I've ever met, no matter which category they're in, didn't choose where they were stationed, where they deployed to. It was at least once somebody did the choosing for them, and unless you're a politician, you probably didn't choose where you were where people were being sent. So that's a big thing for me, and the I think that's what you know, allowed me to be okay with you know, doing what we do and having the confidence in that, because we've all been put in some incredible situations, and you know, I can't say that it wasn't scary to be, you know, videotaped or pictured on the cover of High Times magazine in my Marine Corps camis with a big joint in my mouth. But I think obviously, if I wasn't in the military, I wouldn't have made the cover of that magazine, nor would I have you know, been able to find the confidence in order to be the advocate that I hope or the advocate I strive to be, and at least understand that there's something bigger than me that's important in all of our lives, and that's I hope that answers your question. I just I guess I got sidetracked while I was helicoptering, but yeah, hopefully I answered your question, Etienne. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. With that, we'll go on over to Michael Krawitz with the next couple of questions.
Yes. So the number 7, we had kind of written down some notes, and the notes we wrote were veterans, spouse, children, family, relationship to the veterans in the cannabis community. And to sort of flesh that a little bit out more into a question, I mean, we haven't really talked about that. You know, it's like we talk about everything around it. It just seemed like something that came up in our notes and our discussion, I think quite righteously, because that's the elephant in the room. The family and friends and the spouse doesn't necessarily know, you know, straight up the military record without checking it themselves, you know, but they know their loved one, and they know, you know, a lot more of the story probably than anybody else, and are probably in a position to put the brakes on it or put gasoline on the fire. So I'm just wondering, I guess, which way you think it goes. If the family is part of the problem or part of the solution, or both, or if you have any thoughts on it at all, I guess. ATM.
Well, it does have an effect. I mean, those that have served, we know that the families serve with us. They served alongside of us. That's why I do consider spouses of those who served, veterans as well, because they've served alongside. Unfortunately, they are the ones that have to suffer when we're away and have to go away or sent across country or around the world. Each is unique. I know it had an effect on me in a sense that, my stepdad, World War II, never said anything about it. I had no idea until I found his medals. Okay. Whereas my uncle was paranoid schizophrenic in and out of rubber rooms because he had mental issues, but they surfaced when he was a submariner in the Navy. And he was given proper discharge, but he spent the rest of his days in VA care until he disappeared in 1981, never to be seen or heard from again. So it's had an effect on my family because these were real veterans who suffered. My stepdad, he was lied to about the access of his paperwork because there was apparently a large fire in St. Louis in the 50s that destroyed a lot of records of veterans. And when he originally went to the VA, they didn't want to deal with him, so they just told him his paperwork was in the fire. And it wasn't until he was he was a septuagenarian and into his octogenarianism that he actually found out that was not the case. And because he was a World War II veteran, he ended up being taken, great care of. However, and then, my cousin who was killed in action. So I've never had anybody try to fake any type of stolen valor around me or my family or in my family, because all throughout my family is honorably served as best as possible. So but at the same time, if somebody is performing stolen valor in the family of somebody who has known mental issues, etc., I think Al probably saw more of that from people who were convincing family members that they had served. And then, Al, I mean, how many people did you have to tell family members that the person who's telling you this is actually lying? I mean, that had to be...
Yeah, there weren't a lot, ETN, but you're right. There was a significant portion. My job as a constable, I drove anyway, 300 miles a day. And I would light off in my pickup truck and I'd go here and I'd go there and I'd go here. And basically I was going to people's homes. So I would interface with the veteran's spouse. It was always a male. We didn't have any nurses out there, and the kids. And after a couple of visits, maybe one or two max, I would identify this guy as a phony, and I would go back for that second or third visit, and I would tell him, "We got you, dude. You go away. You're a fake." And of course, I'd tell the spouse, your husband is a fake. You may know it. I don't know what you know, but he's a fake. So yeah, it happened. The whole damn military world sucks. You end up doing shit you don't want to do all the time. And that was one of the things. But again, back in my day,
what was the reaction from
1 in 5?
What was the reaction from the spouse when you would say that? Just out of curiosity.
Usually, they were they didn't want to believe me, but they did. They were confused. They had probably heard their husband's stories about whatever, which were probably phony, made up, movie shit. I don't know. And then along comes this fucking guy out of nowhere, says it's all bullshit. And I've got credentials. I've got the authority to say that. And I don't know what that does to a marriage. I don't think it's healthy, of course, to have any kind of lying in a marriage. But there was a lot of that. There was one out of five was a lie to begin with. That's a heavy number, 20%. I don't know what it is now, but that's what it was then, and we replicated that number all over the country.
That's a significant number. Wade, did you have a response to this, sir?
Well, I wasn't going to take it in this direction of the stolen valor part of the conversation, but in terms of impacts to family and spouses and whatnot, one of the things that I've really spent a lot of time thinking about is how completely the military takes a young person out of the life you once had and puts you into a whole new framework. To Pearson's observation that, you're going to randomly get told to go someplace and do something that's probably not real pleasant, but you're going to go ahead and do it anyway because you took an oath to do so. And family members can read words on a page about that experience, but living that experience and the memories of it in your mind and in your body, that's not something that you can really tell people about. You live it. And even the process of boot camp and the training, the process of learning how to go about the techniques of war and how to kill, it's profoundly disturbing. And if you haven't done it, you can't really understand what that's like. And meantime, when you're discharged, especially those first few months or years, you've all of a sudden left a whole world made up of people that understand exactly all the insanity you've been dealing with for the last X number of years. And now you're back in the quote unquote normal world and trying to fit into all these frameworks that no longer fit you because you're a completely different person. And I don't think that there's really an understanding of that when folks are discharged from the service on the part of our culture and welcoming the veterans who have been discharged back into our culture, nor is there an understanding of that on the part of the military. The profound changes that happen to persons that enter military service, take that training, take that oath, and perform those acts that many of us would rather never think about again. But we were asked to do it and did our job. And so, I think that's a hard divide that needs to be bridged somehow. That understanding needs to come into our culture. And that's all I had on it, Etienne. Thank you.
You mean after you got out of your service, you didn't work in an engine room in a ship in the... Don't worry, there's no use for, artillery in the real world either, unless I want to go around and, shoot down avalanches around, snow jumps. However, Mike made a point in chat is that, if people are using their military service to get laid, then, people get pregnant, then how many families are built on that falsehood? Okay.
Let me, that's funny. It is. And I appreciate the humor. But again, I'm an old timer, so I just want to go back to a 2.5, maybe 3-year deployment that I made with the CB battalion. We left California. We went to Puerto Rico. We worked down there and a dozen other places out of there. And then we came back to California. We fought the fires. We did all that shit. Then they sent us to Diego Garcia. We spent a year down there building airstrips and piers and roads and all kinds of shit. And it's another story. And then they sent us back to California. And then we went to Guam. And then we came back. And 85% of the married men that left with me to go to Puerto Rico came back from Guam divorced. Now, I guarantee you, these guys were not fooling around. The 10 months we spent in Diego Garcia in the middle of the Indian Ocean, there were 1,400 of us. Every one of us was a man. was nobody to fool around with, unless, you know, of course there was if you were of that disposition. But there were no women. 84% of the married men in that battalion came back after two and a half deployments divorced. They didn't do anything wrong. So there's, you know, there's this thing about service with, and certainly those spouses, men and women, that served for the tour, whatever that tour is, 4 years or 20, are certainly of my respect. But the women that walked away from 84% of my Seabees, who were working their ass off, doing the best they could do in defense of their country in secret missions in the middle of fucking nowhere, you know, they don't have any respect for me at all. So, you know, let's not be, I'm not trying to knock anybody here. I'm just not going to be too inclusive about who we include. And you Army guys, I might be wrong about this. I think I'm not, and it's scary as shit. My understanding is Army officers that went to Afghanistan married. 96% of them were divorced. You want to be an Army officer, dedicate your life, go to West Point, dedicate your life to your country, and the women that are supposed to support you leave you while you're over there or when you come back. There's something wrong with this country. You know, I went through this warrior thing with World War II. We got over that. We figured out how to do that. But there's another thing here between this family thing. When I joined the Navy, I had a first-class petty officer come up to me and say, "Hey, Anderson, you married?" Well, I said, "Yeah, Petty Officer Keel, I am." He says, "You know, you're not supposed to have a wife." I said, "Why's that?" He says, "You're in the Navy. They didn't issue you one." And he had a point. The military is not necessarily a place for family. I hate to say that, but it really isn't. And I think it's a problem. It has nothing to do with what we're talking about, stolen honor. In a way, it does, because if you're a spouse, male or female, and you're going to hook up with the other sex and they're professional military, don't you have to honor that commitment that he or she is making? And therefore, don't you, as the spouse, have to adopt a certain amount of honor about this shit too? Or are you just stealing honor because you're hanging on to the coattails of a real heroine? I don't know. It's a question. I don't know the answer, but it's something that's troubled me ever since I was a CB. And that's been a long time ago.
Very good points. Apt points. Go to George.
I think basically I fall right where I did before. I think that most of them are lying, so that tells you what kind of people they are. In general, if we're going to talk about spouses and stuff, I don't think it would play a big role in it. Like I said, I think these people, most of them have some type of mental struggle that they're going through, that they're looking for this type of attention. And I think that most spouses would probably have bought into the lie, I guess, is my suspect of it. Yeah, so that's about all I got to say about that.
Pearson.
Sorry. Service in Alaska, right? So just to reiterate, the question is how families are affected by
Yeah, both ways.
Uh,
The interaction of the family, the role that the family plays, or how we should interact with the families, you know, to be proactive. Any of that.
right on. I think Al's right with families are not, the military isn't the greatest place to start a family, and it's something that we do now. I think there was a time and place where you had to get permission from your commanding officer in order to go get married. Now there's not much of a choice, and any you know I was one of them. I got married when I was you know not old enough to drink yet, and you know, September 11th, 2006, it was a disaster. 5 years after a previous disaster. Tuesday, Marine Infantry Squad Leaders Course, they let me out a couple minutes early, and I grabbed two people that were there for traffic court to be the witnesses. It was a magical day. But yeah, having to go through something like that, and this is, I guess, something that hasn't been touched on yet. Maybe, maybe not. The sacrifice, just having to leave your family for weeks on end, like with the Marine Corps Infantry, we would go out in the swamp for 2 weeks. And I had, at the time, my wife at home, leaving a young, you know, spouse in a place that they more than likely didn't grow up in, is tremendous on both parties, and to the point of even dealing with adding to the suicide rate. We just real suicide that was close to me in my unit was Corporal Allen, and he found out his wife was pregnant 6 months into the deployment, and she was only 3 months pregnant. And you know, it's a tremendous burden, and by faking or dressing up as and trying to put yourself across as a legitimate service member, you know, there's so much that goes into, you know, having to deal with families, stuff like that, and the hardship and the burden is incredible. And when you just throw a uniform on, thinking that it's you know, it's okay, I'm gonna get something out of it, it really hits the moral fabric of the person that does it. Thank you.
Mike?
Yeah, so the next question I put in quotes, used tanks. And the question revolved around the notion of the military equipment that is being given to state police and local police all around the United States. It's a rather formal thing. Yeah, actually, a little side note, it used to be a great stuff to find at flea markets and stuff like that, all kinds of military gear. And I guess they stopped that. They only give it to the police now. So for many years, you know, now this is the only way that this used gear gets recycled into the final use in some productive way after the military gets sent to the police for them to use, Homeland Security, whatever. And many police are actually military veterans. But I don't know of any formal process or any formal relationship between the military, not like, you know, the equipment, which gets literally handed over. I'm sure there's some sort of, you know, process, although it's minimal for an ammo can, but it would be more sophisticated for you know, guns and things like that, I imagine. But yeah, anyway, that's a very interesting question, and one that we really haven't looked at or been able to kind of pry into until now. This relationship between the military veterans of the military and then veterans in the first responders, police, security, etc. What should that relationship look like, and how should we make that maybe more formal?
Well, that's a one that's been escalating more, especially since the Greater War on Terror. More things of those large vehicles that have been created to be anti-mines, mine machines, etc., that are being used to intimidate locals by the police forces, be it for, back in the day, it was a dare that would take seized vehicles, and local sheriffs would take those dare stickers and put them across these vehicles and then turn them into their local sheriff's police car, and then drive around, and then they go to all these schools and take the kids out of schools and say, hey kids, see this car? This was stolen we took this from this drug dealer. So if you go around and you think you're going to get over on us, we're going to steal what you have, and this is what we stole. So here's what we stole, so you be fucking good or else. Okay? So that's gone on for generations. Now, the escalation for military gear has really been co-opted by the police departments. I mean, I've seen an escalation, especially since my Gulf War, and especially since the Greater War on Terror. I mean, it's hard to tell the difference between a police officer and the military. I mean, you go off and you saw the police and riot gear today for the Roe versus Wade. They were out there in full-on riot gear, and they looked just like stormtroopers, from shields, vests, and everything forward. So the militarization of the police is a discussion that we should definitely take up at. I think that's a deeper discussion, needless to say. Then I think this discussion can hold. However, it's a recent phenomena because the military, with its de-escalation of the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, have found a very cheap and easy way to dump their military surplus and get newer things by just charging the local police department $1.99, whatever the thing is, for those vehicles, etc., that the police now then paint in their colors and then drive around in the local parade and use for anything from beating down somebody's house to SWAT teams to even using it to pull people over in traffic. So there is a big problem with the militarization of our police force that has driven a further wedge already than the drug war has already driven, by the military forces equipment becoming police equipment. They've really doubled down on the drug war and the mentality, and using the stormtrooper mentality as the good guy versus the bad guy, further entrenching a sociological breakdown in society that will be even harder to re-bridge because of that militarization. George?
First of all, yes, yes, yes. On everything ATN said, I cannot agree more. I think it's a problem. And I don't know if this will be a contrary opinion to how others feel, but I think that being a military veteran is different regardless of what you do as a police officer, regardless of what that service is. I think being a military veteran is different from all of those. So I would fall on the side of keeping them separate until it comes to treating like diseases. Like I said, I'm very open to PTS treatments and stuff like that, but I don't think we have to call them veterans, because I think that should be reserved. As I've said earlier, and everybody has said in this group, there are certain things that you have to do to gain that. And I wouldn't feel right calling somebody in a police uniform a veteran if he didn't serve in the uniform. I would be happy to call him a veteran of the police force because he's not a veteran of the armed forces. And in our society, veteran is used in that way. So I would fall on the way of no. And to tie into what ATN is saying, I think part of that problem is that a lot of these people get all these military equipment and they're working for a small town police force. If you want to carry an M16 or what do they call them, an M4 now, there's an easy way to do that in America, and you can do it the day you turn 18 years old without your parents' permission. You can go raise your right hand just like I fucking did, or you don't need to carry an M4. We don't need them. That's the way I feel about it. And I think it's part of the gun problem is that when you start arming a whole police force, you got a small town police force that's got an armed vehicle and 10 guys that jump out with M4s. What do you think the criminals in that thing are going to be looking for? They aren't going to be looking for a handgun to protect themselves for when they get raided. They know what's coming when they get raided, and it adds to the problem. But I think in general, it's a problem that they want. I don't want to say want to be military people, but that's, I think you just look at what happened on January 6th, and anybody wearing those dark brown vests, what we know as true military gear that wasn't a veteran, part of that is based on just what we're talking about tonight, and they're grandizing this view of the American warrior. And we all know that it's not the pretty picture that they paint, but also we know that it's too close to our heart for us to allow it to be used. So I'll just stop there. I know we're running late.
All right. Does anybody else want to speak toward this one?
I'd jump in for just a second and say, I think this is also a rich topic for conversation. And I'll just throw this in there for when we have that conversation. I think the police forces and their interaction with the citizenry in this country would be considerably easier to stomach if the police force had the same sort of rules of engagement that folks in the military have. End of statement.
Yep, I had to be accountable for every single bullet. And that's the reality of being in the military, is you are responsible for that even in a combat situation. There are rules of engagement, and we are all properly taught them, and we all know what we are doing, and so we all know when they are broken. Michael.
Yeah, an interesting contrast. Years ago, the New York City police cars said to serve and protect on the paint on the side. And now they say courteous CPR. It's got CPR in big bold letters, and it says courtesy, professionalism, respect. And everybody that's looked at that I've told has said the same thing. Yeah, that's what they expect from you. So it's like they've kind of switched with the military thinking. It's come full circle from being part of the community, a community resource, community policing, kind of part of holistic restorative justice in the community, to being an outside force, essentially some kind of outside force that's used at the discretion of the government in some capacity. I think one of the main things that seems to emerge right at this moment that needs to be put into place is a database, a simple database that all police forces have to take part in, and when they fire someone, it goes into that database, and that way they don't get picked up by another police force. Because I can't think about it, any cases where it hasn't been someone that hasn't been passed around that really wound up being the problem child in the police problems that we've seen over this last few years. So you get rid of the, they always say, oh, there's a rotten apples. Well, there's usually a system to get rid of rotten apples. and that would be, that would be my thing. If they want to subscribe to that, line of thought that it's just a few rotten apples, then help us get rid of those rotten apples and make sure they don't come back. And I guess I'll throw one out. Last thing is the private prisons is something that absolutely is an anathema to our free society. I forget what the quote was, something along the lines of the society is judged by how you treat the elderly, the disabled, and the children, something like that. Well, you know, you got people in prison and you treat them worse than you treat animals. That doesn't bode well for your karma.
Well, there's another one that you judge a society by how they treat their prisoners. And yeah, as well. Al.
Just a short one to go back to the idea of the militarization of the police, and you know, I'm pretty much against it. But my brain took me back to, I believe it was Katrina, horrible hurricane down on the coast. A Louisiana town was inundated, and the governor authorized the Louisiana National Guard get in there and help them out. And damned if they didn't come, all of them, infantry. And they were in their 6.5s, and there was a convoy, and they were coming, hundreds of them. And standing there as I entered the town was a lone soldier, a brigadier general, but a lone soldier. And he stepped in front of that lead convoy truck, and everybody the whole damn convoy stopped. And he looked at the soldiers in that truck and he says, "You're here to help these people, not shoot them. Point those rifles to the ground." All the troops were sitting there ready to fight. That's what they were trained to do. And I found that so instructive, leadership and just social, wow. You know, and I think that's a lesson I'm trying to put into this police thing. If you go there anticipating trouble, you're probably going to find it. If you go there with the rifles down and you're willing to be patient and do the right thing and help people, it's probably going to work out that way. And I admire that brigadier to this day. I wish I could remember his fucking name, but he was a big, tall guy. He was obviously from Louisiana. They actually had him on as a talk show guy for a while because he was just he was too good. He was too real. He was too human. They had to, you know, he had to go. But that's the lesson. Put the rifles to the ground.
Put the rifles to the ground. Very profound words. But at the same time, I want to thank you all for joining us tonight. I think this is going to wrap up our discussion on Stolen Valor. We weren't able to get to all of our questions, but it also brought up some further discussions that we can have in the future. I want to thank all of our members for joining us tonight. George Armstrong, Wade Laughter, Michael Krawitz, Al Byrne, Nate Landau, Pearson Kennedy Crosby, for joining us tonight for a very fascinating discussion. It has many layers, which is why we went with those layers everywhere. We appreciate you all for joining us tonight. And we'll be back in 2 weeks with V.A.C. Roundtable number 39. Thank you, everybody, for joining us, and you have a great rest of your night.